Hello and welcome into another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. I'm Kyle Glaser, going solo today as we break down the Padres roster. The rotation and the bench are set. The Padres made a number of official roster moves yesterday, optioning catcher Luis Campusano, infielder outfielder Connor Joe, right-hander Stephen Kolek, and Ron Marinaccio to AAA El Paso. With those moves, the rotation and the bench have come into view. As Kevin Acee of the San Diego Union Tribune and AJ Cassavell of MLB.com reported, we now have a bench. Jose Iglesias, who the Padres signed to a minor league deal, but with a $3 million roster bonus, made the team. No surprise there whatsoever. Martin Maldonado will be the backup catcher behind Elias Diaz. And this was an interesting debate between Luis Campusano and Martin Maldonado. Campusano is the better hitter, Maldonado the better defender. Ultimately, the Padres went with Maldonado's defense, veteran leadership, ability to run a staff. Made a lot of sense. When we did our roster projections last week, myself and Heath Bell, we went with Campusano on the projection just because the offense, but Maldonado makes a lot of sense. It's not a huge surprise the Padres chose his veteran leadership and his defense. So Jose Iglesias and Martin Maldonado taking up two of the bench spots, the utility infield spot and the backup catcher spot, are not huge surprises. The other two spots will be filled by Yuli Gurriel, the veteran first base and DH, who the Padres also signed to a minor league deal with a roster bonus this year, and Brandon Lockridge, who was acquired from the Yankees in a midseason trade last year. He will be the team's fourth outfielder. I want to start with this bench and the decisions that were made. Again, Maldonado and Iglesias, no surprise at all. But I think it's important to break down the decision to keep Yuli Gurriel and how that bled into the decision to award the final bench spot to Brandon Lockridge, and understanding where they fit on the roster. Right now, the Padres, you look at their first base DH options, they're all left-handed, primarily at least Luis Arias and Gavin Sheets, as well as Jake Cronenworth when he goes over and plays first base as well. So having a right-handed first base DH option made a lot of sense. And in a lot of ways, it was going to come down to Yuli Gurriel and Connor Joe. And the fact the Padres chose Gurriel is interesting. So we have to keep in mind their contract status. Gurriel, if he was not selected to the Major League roster, had the ability to opt out. Connor Joe had an option left. So from a roster flexibility standpoint, the Padres opted to keep Gurriel, use that option on Joe, even though they signed him to a major league deal. That way, they were able to keep both of them. So you understand it from that perspective. But from a production perspective, it was an interesting decision. When you look at Yuli Gurriel over the last 3 years, he has really, really struggled. And I think it's important to note that Yuli Gurriel is a tremendous hitter with a great career in Cuba, as well as with the Houston Astros. He was a staple of their championship teams. But over the last 3 seasons, he's really, really struggled. He's hit 243, 297, 356, has really kind of fallen off. Connor Joe, on the other hand, who also gives the Padres the ability to play first base and DH like Yuli Gurriel, also gives them additional flexibility in that he can play left field and a little right field as well. So he is more versatile. He's also been more productive over the last 3 seasons than Yuli Gurriel. Joe's hit 238, 333, 384. So Connor Joe's had a similar batting average, but he's been more than 30 points higher in on-base percentage, nearly 30 points higher in slugging percentage. He's also going into his age 32 season, while Gurriel's going into his age 41 season. So in Connor Joe, the Padres had a more productive, younger, and more versatile option than Yuli Gurriel for this bench spot. But they chose Gurriel. Again, it's an interesting decision. It's a lot more about kind of the roster flexibility that this way they can keep both of them in the organization. Even though Gurriel has struggled the last 3 seasons, he performed well in spring training. But I think it's important to note, comparing him to Joe as well, as I mentioned, Joe's younger, more versatile, more productive over the last 3 seasons. Joe also outperformed Gurriel in spring training, had an OPS more than 100 points higher, while also playing in more games, getting more at-bats as a larger sample. So well, spring training statistics obviously don't mean a whole lot when you're talking about 2 players competing for the same spot. Joe did outperform Gurriel, but the Padres chose to keep Yuli Gurriel, and as a result, he will be on their opening day roster and receive a roster bonus of $1.25 million. Joe will head down to AAA. We will see him at some point this year, but again, I think it shows how much the Padres were valuing their roster flexibility as well as some of the veteran traits that Gurriel brings over pure production. Because from a pure production standpoint, again, looking at objectively, again, Joe's younger, more versatile, been more productive over the last 3 seasons, and was more productive in spring training. And once the Padres decided that Yuli Gurriel was going to make the team, that bled into the decision for who was going to fill the fourth bench spot. Because we mentioned Connor Joe has that versatility of, yes, he could be first base DH. He could also play left field, right field, be the platoon for Jason Hayward. Yuli Gurriel doesn't have that flexibility. He's really limited to first base DH only. So with him, Martin Maldonado, Jose Iglesias, a veteran heavy group, the Padres then have a need for a pure outfielder. And Brandon Lockridge is the only guy who could play center field, which is something they really, really, really needed, and really play all three outfield positions they had available of their options. Again, Joe could play the corners, Tirso Ornelas can play the corners, Oscar Gonzalez could play the corners, but they needed someone who could play center. If they'd gone with Connor Joe, who could play left, right, maybe they bring in Tyler Wade and he becomes their shortstop slash center fielder. He's played it a little bit and did some good things out there against the Giants in his stint there in spring training. But once it was Yuli Gurriel, Brandon Lockridge became the only choice because they needed someone who could play all three outfield positions, and he's the only one who can do that. Brandon Lockridge, of course, had a very, very good spring training. He can hit for power, or he can hit for average. He can run. He can play defense. He does a lot of nice things. Definitely a good player to have, a good fourth outfielder type. And again, he performed in spring training. He's performed in AAA. He doesn't have much left to prove out there. So once they chose Gurriel, Lockridge became the next logical candidate, really the only candidate, because they needed someone who could play all three outfield spots, and he was the only person they really had that could do that. So that's the Padres bench. What's interesting about it, it's a very, very, well, it's an exclusively right-handed bench, but they do have plenty of lefties in the starting lineup. You have Jake Cronenworth, you have Jackson Merrill, you have Luis Ariz, you have Jason Hayward. So it's not that this team is going to be too right-handed heavy at all. It's just going to be a situation where if it's late in the game where a right-handed pitcher started and they need a left-handed bat off the bench, they don't have that option on most days. But we'll see. Again, I think that it'll be really interesting to see how much Yuli Gurriel is able to give them in his age 41 season, and just given his recent struggles. We've talked about Jason Hayward's struggles as well in spring training and how his swing and his at-bats have just not looked great. He's obviously in his mid-30s as well. So we'll see what the Padres can get out of these veterans, because they've gone very, very veteran heavy again with Maldonado, with Gurriel, with Iglesias, with Hayward in the starting lineup. It'll be interesting to see. But again, this is their bench. There's going to be strengths here. There's weaknesses. I think what stands out is you will get good defense from this bench. Jose Iglesias can really defend. He primarily played second base for the Mets last year because they had Francisco Lindor, but in his prime, this was one of the best shortstops in baseball defensively. He can really pick it. He can still play the position. He can slide to third if needed. Brandon Lockridge is a good defender who can play all three outfield spots. Martin Maldonado is an elite defensive catcher, even at his age. He doesn't offer much offensively, but the Padres really prioritized their defense with their bench, at least three of the four spots. And look, it's smart. You have a vast, expansive outfield in Petco Park. And again, you want to help your pitchers out as much as possible, especially given there's some unproven arms at the back rotation who will really need as much defensive help as they can get. And again, I think that overall, the surprises are not Iglesias and Maldonado. Gurriel's a little bit of a surprise, but he clearly showed the Padres enough to make the roster, and Lockridge as well had a really, really good camp. And once the Padres made that decision for Gurriel, he was the logical choice. So that's the bench. The Padres have also made a number of moves that are going to determine their rotation. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back to jump into that.
If you're looking for premium clothes at an affordable price, you got to check out True Classic. AJ, you're rocking the True Classic shirt right now.
Oh, believe it. Look at this thing. Look at it. Soft. It fits perfect, even with these guns. Not too tight like Scott likes it. Little bit of room to move in there, right? Look, you can wear it under a suit. You can wear it out to dinner with some nice jeans. You can wear it to the gym if that's what your game is. Whatever it takes, this thing fits great, feels great. Great shirt.
The long sleeve Henny for these cold, kind of warm spring days. Perfect.
Yep. Build the perfect outfit in 5 minutes or less. Everything goes great together. Free shipping on all orders. It's designed to bring out your best features with the perfect fit. So, FT fam, whether you're bundling up for the cold or getting ready for spring, level up your style with clothes that actually fit right. Go to our exclusive link, trueclassic.com/foul to save. That's trueclassic.com/FOUL. Shop now and elevate your wardrobe today. FT fam, get after it.
All right, welcome back to Friar Territory. I'm Kyle Glaser. We talked about the Padres' moves in terms of optioning Luis Campusano, optioning Connor Joe, and what that meant the final bench would look like. The other moves they made, optioning Stephen Kolek and Ron Marinaccio, provided some clarity on the pitching side as well. And we're going to discuss what the starting rotation is. It will be Michael King on opening day. Dylan Cease will be the starter for the game 2 against the Braves. One of Kyle Hart and Randy Vasquez will start game 3 of the Brave series. You'll have Dylan Cease going on Sunday Night Baseball. You'll have Nick Pivetta going on Sunday Night Baseball. And then the other of Kyle Hart and Randy Vasquez will start the series opener against Cleveland. So with the decision to option Stephen Kolek to AAA, Kyle Hart and Randy Vasquez will be the Padres' 4 and 5 starters to open the season. And this really was, in a lot of ways, the logical choice and the logical conclusion, just because of the experience they have as starters. Kyle Hart started 26 games in Korea last year, won the equivalent of the Korean Slang Award, and prior to that had been a regular starter in AAA as well. So he has a lot of starting experience. Padres gave him a major league deal. He was late getting going in spring training just because he had a flu that was hitting a lot of players in the Padres clubhouse. He's going to probably need a little bit of time to build up to where he's fully durable and able to go, 6-7 consistently. But especially once the injuries to Yu Darvish and Matt Waldron hit, it was very, very clear that there was a spot for him and that he deserved and needed to be in the rotation. He also gives the Padres a lefty. The rest of their rotation is all right-handed now, so it gives them a little bit of change in dynamics. So just given left-handed, given his success in Korea as a starter last year, given he's on the major league deal, the signs a free agent, it's really not a surprise Kyle Hart made the rotation once Yu Darvish and Matt Waldron went down with injuries, which left the last spot, Randy Vasquez versus Stephen Kolek. And the big thing to note here is that Randy Vasquez has major league starting experience. He has started 25 games in the majors. He started 20 games for the Padres last year. While the overall numbers weren't great, he was much better the second half of the season. From June 22nd through the end of the year, his ERA was in the low 4.2s. Just everything was better. And when you have a guy who had 20 starts for you last year and performed well down the stretch, that's a pretty compelling place to start. Stephen Kolek definitely showed some good things in spring training. He was a Rule 5 pick from the Mariners last year, pitched in relief, had an ERA over 5. Now he doesn't have Rule 5 restrictions. He can go down to the minor leagues. The biggest thing with Stephen Kolek is he's never started a game in the major leagues. And he also was not a starter at all in AAA. Last time he was a starter was at AA Arkansas in 2022. So when you look at Kyle Hart, starter in Korea last year, made 26 starts, has multiple years of starting experience in AAA. Randy Vasquez, 20 starts in the major leagues last year, has significant major league starting experience compared to Stephen Kolek. And Kolek just has never started a game in the major leagues before, has never really started a game in AAA before. It makes sense to send Kolek down, let him get stretched out. I did think there was an argument to be made that Stephen Kolek should have been the final piece of the bullpen, just because the Padres are going to start the season with 13 games in 14 days. So realistically, there's a decent chance they'll need a long man. If someone has a rough day, we talked about Kyle Hart not being fully built up yet, just he's a little late getting going in spring training. It would have made sense to keep Kolek in the bullpen as your long man. Let him go, 3 innings if you need. If there's someone gets blown up, you don't want to burn through the bullpen. But the Padres made the decision to option him. So the rotation is set, as we said. King, Cease, Pivetta, Hart, Vasquez, Kolek, and AAA. We will see him at some point this year. It's inevitable. And now it's just a matter of filling out the last bullpen spot. Logan Gillespie is probably the favorite for it. We'll have to see. The Padres opening day roster will be released on Thursday, most likely. It's going to be an interesting year, as we've talked about. This is a team that has a lot of talent up top, and they've gone with veteran talent to supplement it. We talked about the Padres don't have a lot of depth at the top of their farm system, and that's where you see a lot of non-roster invitees making the club. Gavin Sheets made the club. Jose Iglesias made the club. Yuli Gurriel made the club. And these are all veterans who, again, Sheets absolutely deserved it and earned it and probably should be the Padres starting opening day DH, as I talked about with Mike Cameron and Heath Bell, getting out of Chicago, coming out, and he hit a lot better against lefties in camp as well this year. I think there's a chance there's still some upside there, and we'll see him establish himself Iglesias, we've talked about, great glove man. And Gurriel, again, they're going to go with him as their first base DH option to face lefties. And we'll see how it works out. I think the other thing, too, that we need to talk about is the players who didn't make the club and what this means. Tyler Wade and Eguy Rosario are both out of options. Tyler Wade provides a versatile glove across the infield, provides a left-handed bat off the bench. He's certainly not a dangerous hitter by any means, but lefty changes the dynamic, can make some contact, has some speed. Between his versatility, his contact ability, and his speed, I think there will be plenty of teams interested in picking him up to round out their bench. We'll see. You never know. A lot of teams, are still making some final roster moves and some roster decisions here in the final days. So we'll see what opens up where, and maybe the Padres are able to keep him. Eguy Rosario just did not perform well in camp. Again, he's a spark plug who can do some good things, but a versatile bench piece has always been his projected role down from the time he was in Lake Elsinore. He can play second. He can play third. He got some experience in the outfield this year. That's going to be a work in progress. He can't really play short. So with Eguy Rosario, you're looking kind of that spark plug, second base, third base type. And just with what the Padres have on their roster, what they needed, it just wasn't the best fit. They needed someone who could play shortstop in the event Xander Bogaerts gets hurt or isn't as effective over there as they hoped. They needed someone who could play center and was maybe a little more polished in the outfield corners defensively. And Rosario, again, just struggled to hit. So he's out of options. I think there's a chance he gets back to AAA and passes through without being claimed. Again, we'll see. It really is just going to depend on, again, other teams, the moves they're making, what they feel like they need, what their roster fits are, and who opts out. It's going to be a lot of moving pieces all over the league. So it's tough to really predict right now who they're going to be able to pass through. Again, if I had to guess, I would guess that Tyler Wade gets picked up by someone. The Padres are able to keep Eguy Rosario on their system. We will see. Both of them are out of options and will have to be DFA'd. Oscar Gonzalez had a really, really, really good camp and someone that absolutely looked like, he's a major league caliber player. Only 2 years ago with Cleveland, he had a really, really good year, has some prospect pedigree. Struggled last season, but again, the Padres needed an outfielder who could play center once they decided Yuli Gurriel was going to make the roster. And Oscar Gonzalez is a pure corner guy. Right field is his best position. So again, just a matter of roster fit. He has an opt-out, and there's certainly a possibility, he will get picked up with how he performed in camp, just some of the pedigree he has. He certainly looked the part of a big leaguer. And I think there's a decent chance we will see him in the major leagues this year, whether it's with the Padres or with someone else. Tirso Ornelas is a really, really, really great story. I've talked about this a lot, how, back when he was in Lake Elsinore in A-ball, his swing was in such a bad place. He was hitting 220 in A-ball in a very, very hitter-friendly league. And the Padres sent him back down to Arizona to completely rebuild his swing. And he has put in the work. He has put in the effort. He has fought through injuries over multiple years. And for him to put himself in contention for an opening day major league roster spot is really, really impressive and a testament to his work ethic, his makeup, and his talent, his ability to make those adjustments. He will start the year in AAA El Paso. We will see him at some point this year once injuries hit. He had a really, really solid camp. Hot start, tailed off a bit toward the end as he started seeing more major league caliber arms, but this is a young player who's still finding his way, and he's only 24. I think, again, he has definitely taken some strides, and we'll see him. The guy that you just feel for is Connor Joe. Connor Joe signed a major league roster, signed a major league deal. He did everything in camp he needed to do. He hit for average. He got on base, hit for some slug. Didn't hit a ton of home runs, but had some doubles and played left field. I mean, he did everything he was brought in to do and everything you wanted to see him do. Hometown kid, Poway High School, University of San Diego. Would have been really special for him to be on the opening day roster. He will start the year in AAA El Paso. Again, there's very little doubt he will be in San Diego this year. He will be playing for the Padres. Again, it's just the decision to keep Yuli Gurriel, squeeze him out, and now we'll see. He'll go down AAA El Paso, and he'll be first in line for a call-up as soon as an opportunity arises. But the end of spring is near. We are 48 hours away from opening day. We have a rotation. We have a starting lineup. We have a bench. And now it's a matter of filling out that last bullpen spot. The Padres roster is coming together. We will see what the final product looks like officially on Thursday. This has been another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. Go ahead and give us a review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever platform you're listening on. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Kyle Glaser. We'll be back tomorrow with Mike Cameron to do a full in-depth season preview of the Padres, including picks, over-unders on certain players, what they're going to be able to accomplish. And then Thursday, I will be down at Petco Park covering opening day. I'll also be there on Friday. We'll have live reports from the opening series. Once again, this is Friar Territory. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll talk to you later this week.